In the fall of 1984, SMU college student Angie Samota had been found murdered. Arriving officers walked in on a bloodbath.
They found one shoe in the den, another shoe somewhere else, then all her clothes stacked up, all in one neat pile, and then Angie laying on the bed, covered in blood. Her chest area was pretty caved in with stab wounds.
So this was a vicious assault.
There were 18 stab wounds, 10 of which punctured the heart, breaking the breastbone and going through the body.
Josh Healy and Patrick Curlin are assistant district attorneys in Dallas. They say whoever stabbed Angie was intent on killing her. That many wounds could certainly suggest rage, anger at the victim.
Absolutely.
From what you could tell, did Angie Samota have any enemies?
It seemed like she had maybe broken some hearts, but enemies, she was the type of person that did not have enemies. Everyone seemed to like her a lot. The only people seemed to be mad at her were ex-boyfriends or people that wanted to be her boyfriend.
Police immediately focused on the men in Angie's life, starting with Ben, her then boyfriend. Ben told police a story that sounded a bit suspicious. He said that after dropping off Anita after their night out, Angie had stopped by his place, waking him up for a brief visit, and that she then drove home. Within minutes of reaching her condo, Ben says Angie called him at around 1:45 a.m. In that phone call, Ben says Angie told him she had let a man she didn't know into her home in the middle of the night, a man who'd asked to use her phone and bathroom. Ben says Angie then hung up, promising to call him back a few minutes later. But she never did, Ben said, and she didn't answer his calls. Concerned, Ben told police he drove to her condo. But Angie wasn't answering her door either, and now Ben was locked outside, calling police on the early generation mobile phone in his truck, and sounding, to them, oddly calm.
My girlfriend called me, said there was a man in her apartment using the bathroom and the phone, and now I cannot get her to answer the phone. Our car is here and she won't answer the door or can't answer the door.
He broke in?
I don't know.
He didn't break in, she let him in?
I'm not sure, I believe so.
Does she know this man?
I don't believe so, no.
Does she won't answer the phone?
No.
Police weren't sure what to make of Ben and his version of events. So there was no way to tell whether the story that Ben had told police on the 911 tape actually happened.
The only thing we had was Ben's word.
No cell phone records back then and no records of local phone calls. So that call that Ben talked about, that may never have happened.
That is correct.
I would expect someone to be, I can't find her, I don't know where she is, she's not answering. It was a very mellow, it was a very feelingless phone call. I mean, it was somebody who didn't seem too concerned.
Ben waited in the living room while police went into Angie's bedroom. They came out and told him Angie was dead.
The first responding officer, what he remembered most was even after he had discovered the body and said so, Ben didn't even ask what condition, how she was, or anything like that.
And sometimes people who don't ask that question don't ask it because they already know the answer.
Exactly.
They didn't ask how she was killed, whether it was gunshot, whether it was stab wounds.
That's unusual.
Very.
And there was something else. Ben's story may have been suspicious, but Ben himself was squeaky clean.
This was approximately 2 o'clock in the morning. He had been awakened from sleep, and he arrived at the location in a clean pressed shirt, and he smelled of soap as if he had just cleaned up. That tended to raise some suspicions with the first responding officers that something just didn't seem right.
While police were trying to process the story Ben was telling, they widened their investigation to include Angie's ex-boyfriend Lance, the boy next door in Amarillo, the boy Angie had trouble with. It was something Angie's friend Sheila knew all about.
He was very obsessed with Angie. He was so obsessed with her, he would come down all the time to school to see her.
They had dated through Angie's freshman year.
One night I got a call from Angie. She was crying and she said that Lance had gone crazy, and I needed to get over there. She was screaming. Lance had taken a knife and shredded all of her clothes.
Did he threaten her?
Yes. Yes, he did.
Physically? Verbally?
Verbally. And you have a weapon, whether it's a knife, scissors, he threatened her. He was a pretty scary guy. He was creepy.
Suddenly, Lance was at the top of the investigators' list.
Prime suspect, absolutely.
Especially when we have a 18-wound stabbing.
There was no forced entry,
That's right.
suggesting that whoever had gotten into her apartment had either figured out some way of getting in undetected, or Angie knew them and let them in.
Yes.
And all of that pointed either to the ex-boyfriend Lance or to Angie's current boyfriend Ben. Or maybe to a new man in her life, the man she'd been out with the last night of her life, Russell. Soon, police would ask Sheila, then a college student, to help narrow down that list of suspects and solve the crime.
He killed her. He needed to pay for it.
Coming up, Sheila's nerve-wracking night with a suspected murderer. And then, investigators get a break.
They had their guy now.
When Dateline continues.